of their industry. Okay, I need to say got it. Okay, so I'll start the presentation. It's a market report. As Peter mentioned, I've been asked by Wabana to produce a market report 4 times a year, and this is more or less this is the third report, at least the last section. But before I present the third report, I decided to present you the basic analysis I've done over the time about the market factor that affects the price of wild blueberries, both frozen and producer price. I've done a lot of statistical analysis. We call that econometrics, but basically I work a lot with Rémi Lambert, who's a Laval University professor. I have in my own firm an a specialist in statistics. I'm not too bad on that too. So the first section will present you the results of the analysis we've done to identify what are the key factors that affect the price of wild blueberries. So basically the objective today is to present you, as I mentioned, the key factors, and then I'm going to go through the current market condition. What's the expected price trend for this year crop? So the first section, one thing we must realize, and it's very important when we do that kind of analysis, you are really in a worldwide market. Roughly 85% of your product is exported either in US or Europe or Japan or other country. In fact, exports from maritime is the frozen blueberries exported in more than 25 countries worldwide. So basically, you are in an open world market in terms of competition. Roughly, your main markets are there. The US, this is for last year crop 21-22. I start the crop in September till August. Basically, you exported more than $77 million of value in the US, 36 million pounds for $2.15 an average. Europe, $95 million. This is your main market, in fact, in value and volume, 48 million pounds for an average of $2. The Japanese market is 23 million, which is an important market for 10 million pounds. And like any other commodity that I follow, because we are working in all sector, the Japanese market is a premium market, so $247 per unit. And other countries, the remaining countries, $17 million for 8 million pounds. So $2.3 per pound. That's for frozen product. In total, you exported the value total maritimes. When I say maritimes, it includes, as you know, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI. Basically, it's $213 million of value exported last year for 100 million pounds, which represents $2.12 in our weighted average price. One thing you have to be careful, as you have probably seen, the US price is a bit below than the other countries, and part of that is due to movement of intercompany, because when they transfer product, they are not, what I observe over time is that they are not, let's say if they transfer product from their processing plant or the freezing plant in New Brunswick to, let's say, Maine, it's not always at the market price. So I'm always careful when I look at the US price, though in average it gives us a fair understanding of what's going on in the market. So that's why I like to also follow the other market, just to make sure that I get the right trend or the right price, the export value. One thing that you must know about where I get those data, it comes from the so-called SH codes. It's an international agreement. Every country has to declare based on a SH code. SH code, it defines the product. So the definition we have for frozen, there's a SH code specific for the frozen wild blueberry. Though we don't know with that SH code, and I have to be clear on that, we don't know if it's grade 1 or utility grade. But by and large, when I look at that, since I have you export more than 85% of your product, I get a fair estimation of the price they receive for the product. So that's where I get the product. Everybody, it's a mandatory declaration by exporter, and it's reported by Statistic Canada. We can get also, when I look at the US figure, we can get it through the US custom also. So which is the same figure because they use the same system. And export from Canada becomes an import in the US. So that being said, you are working in a competitive international market. Remy and I started to analyze what are the key factors. We've done a lot of analysis using a long-term period, like 25 years price, production, and different indicator. But most of the price, you are really in a supply and demand situation. The price is affected by the production level, inventories, disposable income. Disposable income, because what we are analyzed have told us is that the frozen wild blueberry is a so-called luxury good. So it's affected by the level of revenue by family income. So I will touch that later on, but when there is a recession coming, with the recession coming, it will be a question mark. What's going to be the impact on price, the frozen price, the price that the processor will be able to sell their product, depending on how the consumer will be, how do you say, aggressive to buy the product or not. It's also affected by the cultivated frozen blueberry price. We'll see some figure on that. And also the previous year wild blueberry price. One thing I've also observed, since I'm looking at that for more than 12 years now, it's like a 2 years market. And it's like if the previous year affect the price of the current year, and it's like if the industry is really working on 2 years. And it makes sense because over 1 year, they can manage a big crop and try to manage the inventory. But like what we've seen in 2016 or 17, when there's successive big production and the inventory is still going up, at some point they have to sell the inventory, and that's not so good for the price. So basically, here's what I'm showing you is the evolution of the maritime export price over time from 2001, 2002, which is a crop year. As I said, it starts in September and ends in August. That's a marketing year. So the 2001 crop is sold over 12-month period. So basically what it shows is that the price has fluctuated a lot over time. The economic or the statistical analysis we've done using the factor that I've shown on the figure explain most of the variation. The dot point is our model. We'll try to explain. So what it tells us, if I want to be very clear or simple, we are able to explain the price fluctuation with supply and demand factors. As you are aware, and it's fairly simple to understand, there's an inverse relationship between the price, frozen price, and the inventories. And it's like that in any market. When there's surplus inventories, it's not good for price, and that's what we observe for wild blueberries. Here is the mid-Atlantic inventories. The mid-Atlantic comes from the US. We don't have the figure for Canada. It's private information. I don't have access to that. I try to get some sense of it, talking with processors and industry members and also buyers, because we're working in all segments, so I get information from different sources. But the US, in the US, they have to, they do report the cold storage every month. And there's one for blueberry. It's not wild or cultivated blueberries, it's blueberries. So it includes both. But by using mid-Atlantic, which are the as it said, the Atlantic states like Maine, I get a fair sense of what's going on with the if the inventories are going up or down. So this is the evolution over the last 2014 to 2019. And here's the price. So what the export price. As you can see, as the inventories goes up, from let's say from 16 to 48, then the price went down from $1.69 to $1.13. And then, as I said, it's like a 2 years, like the previous year had a bad impact on the 2017 year. So basically, the price went down. And then when the inventory started to go down, again, the price went up. And it makes sense. And the reason why there's an inverse relationship is because inventory is really the end conclusion of the difference between the supply and the demand. So when the supply is greater than the demand, the inventories goes up, so it put pressures down on price. So when the supply is less than the demand, the inventories goes down, sorry. So, and there's a positive pressure on price. So that's one thing we can observe fairly well on this figure. The other one is there's also an inverse relationship between price and supply level. And as I said, I'm using a 2-year average because it's the price that the frozen price is really a 2-year moving average. The way the market works is, and we've done a lot of analysis on that, and we always come to the conclusion that it's really a 2-year moving average. Here's what I've done is the 2-year moving average of North American supply of wild blueberries. So basically that's the production of Quebec, Maritimes and Maine, plus the ending or the beginning inventory at the beginning of the year, so August 1st. So basically what we can see here is the evolution of the supply over time. It went from 257 million pounds to 405 million pounds, and then it went down. So this is, I'm analyzing a lot of market, different commodity, and this is really big swing. And it's very difficult for let's say your processors. At what level do you develop the market? 400 million pounds, 250 million pounds? The one thing that the end user don't like is when you're in and out, because if they decide to develop a customer product with frozen wild blueberries, they need to be sure that they're going to have supply year over year, and that's a big issue for all the industry. This movement of supply over time, and as you can see, there's a direct inverse relationship between the evolution of supply and the price. So basically the low price you had in 2016, 2017 was mainly due to oversupply in the market. And that being said, the one thing I'm telling to the industry member for many years now in Quebec is you should look at the kind of a strategic inventory to at least make sure that the product is always available when there's oversupply, to make sure that we remove that from the market. And let's try to tackle a 350 million pounds market. Because once your market is developed, if you're able to maintain a sustainable or a predictable and sustainable supply, you're going to get better price over time, because your customer will be able to make more market development and make sure that the product is always used and always in demand year after year. So there's a big issue. The other factor we have analyzed is the relationship between wild blueberry. It is really related to the price of frozen cultivated blueberry. In fact, we have a model showing that the frozen cultivated blueberry gives the trend, and then the wild adapt to that based on its specific condition. And here's the maritime export price, and I use the BC export price. As you know, in British Columbia, they export cultivated blueberries. They are the main province that produce cultivated blueberry, almost 95% of cultivated blueberries. So basically what it shows, here's the maritime export price, and here's the cultivated export price from BC. So basically, as you can see, they are moving almost in the same direction. There's some bump. Usually you sell your product at a premium over the cultivated price, the frozen blueberry price, except in this period, if I want the recent history, in 2017, 2018, and if you remember the two previous slides, there was oversupply in the wild blueberries. So at some point, they decided to liquidate the inventories at a very, very low price. I remember at the time I was looking at that and I was surprised that even they went that low. I would have thought that they would at least sell it at the cultivated price, but they decided to sell it to make sure that the inventory disappears very, very rapidly. So they really lowered the price, and that explains why you got so low price during that time period. So right now, like last year, over the last 2 years, the inventories are very low. You got a good premium over the cultivated price. As I said, usually it's sold at a premium. However, it's not the case all the time, depending on the relative situation of supply and demand. Oops, I'm sorry, I went too fast here. This figure is what I've just explained, but that's the difference between the maritime frozen export price versus the BC frozen export price. As you can see, the premium you get over your product varies from minus 40 cents in 2016, which is not a premium, which is a discount. But usually you get a premium around 30 cents. It varies, but your product has more value than the cultivated. For the guy that use your product, your end product for make let's say muffins or yogurt or other product, they would rather use wild blueberry because they have better characteristic. They are more firm. It has more value for them. So basically, that's why it explained that you get a premium over those price, the cultivated price. And your price is directly linked to the selling price of your processor. As you can see, here's the maritime export price, and the green line is the price you have received. So what you can observe, your price vary in the same direction that the price they are able to sell. I have another figure just after that I'll go in more detail about that. What's the gap between the both? That's the frozen export price less the producer price. So what you can see here is roughly there's 90 cents on average. It varies year over year. And the reason why it varies, I have to be very clear, depending of the volume, of the quality of the product, of the basket of what they export, it may explain the differerences that or why it varies one year over the other year. For example, if they sell it 1 year more grade A, they're going to get a better price than if in the next year they sell, let's say 80% grade A and 20% juice quality product. So that will explain the variation, at least for part of it. But one thing I also have analyzed over time, because I've been asked by Quebec producer to make sure that the price they receive is fair, which is a tough question. I realized that when we do the analysis, I prefer to use 85% of the frozen export price. The reason why I'm using 85% is because you're paid on the volume, so-called the gross rate weight. So when you bring your boxes, there's leaves, there's rocks, whatever. They have to clean that. There's some loss at the processing plant. So basically, by using 85%, I remove some of the loss they have. This is the difference between the gross rate you send and the net weight they are able to sell. So basically, I tested different percentage. 85 is probably the one that fit the best. So basically, what you can see is in average over time here, it's 70 cents. And to be honest, I've done the same kind of analysis in Quebec, and I get the same 70 cents. So basically, that's the margin they take between your price and the price they receive over time. Also, because I wanted to check, because if I come back here, you see here the margin was lower and here greater. We've done some analysis here to make sure that it fits year after year. We've done some statistical analysis. When I say we, I've done some work with Rémi Lambert, as I said, from Laval University. Two factors: the maritime frozen export price and the supply level explain most of the variation. Here's the price you receive, and that's the estimation we get when we use these two factors, your export price and the level of supply. Why is the level of supply important? Because the more there's supply, as I said, I don't have their specific inventory, but one thing I know is when there's more and more supply, there's more and more inventories, and there's more and more cost to keep the product. So they remove that from the price you receive because it's a cost to them. So basically, I was over time, what I observed is a similar type of pattern year after year that your buyers are practicing, or the way they establish your price. So that being said, these are the factors that explain most of their variation. We are really in the supply and demand situation. What's the current market condition this year? World frozen blueberry production is at record high in 2022. I will show you the figure, and then that's total frozen blueberry worldwide. As you can see, the production went up from 2017 to 2022. Here's the cultivated, here's the wild, and that's world. For wild, I also include some Ukrainian production, Europe production, like the Scandinavian countries. And the supply, as you can see, has not increased that much over the last 6 or 7 years for wild. But look at the trend with the cultivated. So I mentioned to you that the key factor that explains the price trend in the frozen blueberry sector is really cultivated. I guess you can have a sense of that with this figure. Look at the increase. There's been huge increase in the frozen sector. Most of the product comes from US, Canada, but also from Chile and other European countries. So basically what it shows is that most of the increase of the supply in the market comes from the cultivated sector, and they are very aggressive in the market. They are trying to take market share over your product. So there's some competition. So that's why it explained that they are the leader in terms of price trend. So what I've written here, short-term impact of Ukrainian war. Right now, what's going on in the short run? There's the price is going down in Europe for frozen blueberries, and part of that is because Ukraine had a huge crop, and everybody were surprised that they were able to go and harvest it first. And second one, with what's going on with the Russian trying to put down their electrical system, they don't want to keep inventory in frozen in storage. They sold everything. So in the short run, there has been an oversupply in the market. They just dumped the product, and everybody wanted to help the Ukraine, which makes sense. I mean, I would have done the same thing. So if you speak with your processor or seller, they are nervous now, but I don't think it will last that long. Once this overflow will be digested by the market, I guess the market should keep reasonably well. Not as good as last year, as I will show you, but it will keep reasonably well. That's my feeling in the midterm. Production in Canada and US, this is maritime, your three provinces. Your production is globally up, mainly in New Brunswick and PEI. I think Nova Scotia is fairly average, or the last figure I got. This is still preliminary, but for sure we're going to get more product. Maine is down, and Quebec is very up. So last year was a very bad year for us, down year. We had frost, but this year was a good crop. And to be honest, the 112, I think it might be a bit higher than that. So basically, when I add up everything for the North American market, as you can see, we are expecting a 360 million pounds production this year, which is the second highest over the last 10 years. It's below than 2016, but still it's a big one. So as the factor explained, when the supply is going up, what's going on with price? It's going down. So, but the good news, if there's one this year, is that there's no inventories are very, they are empty. There's no. So they're starting the year with no inventory, so they have the capacity to manage some and keep some in inventories to make sure that the price does not go that low this year. So the other key factor is the per capita disposable income. Here's the Canadian per capita disposable income. It's an index. It starts from 2000 to 2023. It's an estimation. Basically, I put it the COVID period in red. So what you observe here is a rapid growth in disposable income. And the reason for that, I guess you probably knew the answer better than I could do, is all these, the program, the federal program they put in place, either for citizens or for companies. There has been a lot of money flowing in the market, not only in Canada, the same in the US and most of the developed countries. So basically, that has created a huge positive impact for the price and for the demand of wild blueberries. But now the party is over. I think the federal government will be less eager to give money. You see now the impact of the inflation rate, the impact of the increase of the interest rate, the impact it's going to have on disposable income of families. So that's why I'm a bit nervous 2023 in terms of for the demand. For the demand side, there's going to be some pressure coming from the disposable income. We'll see what's going to happen with if there's a recession and how bad it will be. But for most of the family, just the increase in their mortgage payments every month, that will take a lot of their liquidity or their cash flow is going to be pressured by that. So they're going to try to buy cheaper product for sure. So there's some risk here. We'll see how it will affect the sector. But I have some, personally as an analyst, I'm a bit nervous about that aspect. And when I look again at my 2 years moving average, because as I said, it's really a 2 years, this is the 2-year moving average supply of wild blueberries and my relationship with price. Here we are. I think the price is going to go down. It's hard for me at this point to see at what level it will establish. Because if I look at really just short term, I might be too low. But I think we're going to see a decrease in price. I'm a bit nervous about telling a number, because when I say a number, then people say, well, you said that price. But at that point, I see a decrease maybe of, let's say, 30, 35, 40 cents in the market for the frozen market. And as the relationship showed, if there's a decrease in the frozen price, your price is going to decrease too. So it means that there's going to be a negative pressure on the price. It's too early, as I said, and let's say in the next bulletin I will produce for Wabana, I'm going to have more information, and I will probably be able to give a better sense of what's going to be the frozen price, and that's going to give you, based on the historical relationship between your price as a producer and the frozen price, I'll probably be able to give you a better feeling of what's going to be the end price at the end of the year. So basically, that's what I had for you today. I don't know if you have a question or point. I will be more than happy to answer questions.
Excellent, thank you. I just remind everybody too, so we get those reports and we circulate those out to our membership as well through our email list. So if you're not on our email list, you should contact Janet at the front desk so we can be added to that and get that report when it comes in. So are there any questions?
There's one in the chat from Jerry.
Yeah, if you want to answer that.
Okay, Guy, he's asking me, he'd like to hear what I think about the discrepancy with price being paid to grower and timing of payment to grower between competing processor and buyers. I have the similar type of question in Quebec. Let me explain to you first how it works in Quebec, and I will answer the question then. In Quebec, the price, we start with there's a starting price, and then there's interim payment, and there's a final payment August the 15th the following year. Like the producer received their final payment in Quebec for the 2021 crop in August 2022. They had a starting price, and then they had a final price. We had a lot of discussion with processor about that. I've done some work. There's two factors there. The first one is cash flow for both producer and processor. And the second one is the risk, the price risk for processor. Because the faster they pay, like this year, they don't know exactly what's going to be the price in a few months. It's this year, there's more risk in the market. As I showed you, there's outside factors. They don't know how bad is going to be the price reduction for cultivated. They don't know what's going to be the real impact of the recession right now. Because so one thing I realized over time, you're better off to have an initial payment, interim payment, and a final payment, because if there's risk, the processor will cover the risk. They'll pay you less. So, and in fact, we had discussion in Quebec to have the final payment even as late as end of September, because they still add inventories. So, and they were not sold yet, and usually they pay us for the total volume for the, like in Quebec, there's the way the system works, the processor are audited about the price they sell, all the amount they take for processing the product, selling the product, transportation. So it's really a calculated price based on the price they sell less their cost for selling the product, freezing and selling the product. So when they come in August, they have to estimate what's going to be the ending price of their remaining inventory. And at some point, they don't know. So my first point is you're better off not to ask too rapid payments, because if the processor are forced to do that, they're going to cover their risk. They will not want to pay you more than what they can expect to sell. And the second one is the cash flow. When you have huge crop, the processor need the cash flow. And if they have to borrow a huge amount of money, it's going to cost them more, and they're going to reduce your price to pay for that. So it's a trade-off between the cash flow producer and processor. And basically, the system works out now here in Quebec. Producers are fairly happy with that. For sure, they always want a higher beginning price, but by the end of the day, they rather have a bigger ending price than a bigger beginning price.
Okay. Is there any questions from the audience here? We're quite a ways ahead of schedule, so we've got lots of time to, if anybody has any particular questions. I know you have some, Peter.
Usually, you're not that shy.
The difference between the grower price and the producer price, is that stayed fairly consistent, or is that margin changing a bit?
Let me show you a figure there. I like to answer with numbers. That's a very good point. And let me here. Sorry. Yeah, there we are. Okay. This is the price, and that's not what I'm looking for. Okay, that's the one you're asking. The numbers are there. I'm not. You can see them. Let's say if I look since 2006, and to be honest, I prefer to work with the green line than the blue line. It gives us a better feeling of their margin. And margin is not profit. That's the amount they keep. So as you can see, it stayed fairly stable around 70 cents. It varies year over year. And as I said, two factors may explain. When they have huge inventory, it costs them more to keep the product. So what I observe is their pattern is fairly consistent over time, especially when we've done some econometric analysis on that. I mean, the dotted one is the one I use with my model to estimate what should be based on their historical pattern. I'm not saying they're making not enough or too much profit. That's the key question. I don't have that answer. But one thing I observe with this model, using two simple factors, frozen export price and the level of supply, basically their pattern is very, very consistent year after year. There might be some discrepancy like in 2016, 2018. I don't like to go back too much to these 2 years because they were very bad years for everyone. But even there's been some discrepancy there. In fact, they paid a bit more than what I was expecting in 2016, and they paid less than what I was expecting in 2017. But in average, these 2 years, that far, the plus and the minus are fairly similar. So basically, they are consistent over time.
Okay, I have a question on, we talk about wild blueberries being a sort of a high value product and sort of a luxury kind of consumer item. Given what's happened over the last 2.5 years where consumption of wild blueberries has sort of gone up, do we have any idea who those consumers are? And if they've been buying it for 2.5 years, are they going to keep buying it? Those sorts of unknown things. I just want to get your comments about that.
Okay, I don't have maybe Neri has some study on that. I don't have any study about the profile of the consumer. But one thing that I know is that what my fear, like last year, there was a lack of supply. The export price went very high. And sorry for saying that, maybe too high. And the reason why I'm saying too high, and I observe that in other markets that I'm following, when there's the very, very high price, some consumer and I'm not saying the end consumer like people, but let's say the further processor, the one that buy the frozen product and use it for their recipe. And when the price was that high and they were not even able to get the product, they make decision to switch their recipe, and that may affect you in the long run. And that's why I'm saying the importance of having constant, stable supply to keep those markets. Another aspect I'd like to address on that, one thing, because I'm talking about the wild blueberry frozen price, but there is market segmentation amongst the wild. I'll give you a few examples. Like in Quebec, 25% of our production now is organic. This one is really dedicated mainly to the Californian market. A lot is going there for a really niche market. Like Wyman's, which is a buyer in your region, they are selling their own brand. They are using their own brand to sell the product. So everybody now is segmenting its product, and which is a good news. And that will, I think, help to bring more stability or more fidelity from consumer. So there's two competing factors here. I'm not answering it very clear unless Neri has specific study about who's buying the product and the profile of your buyer. But basically, that's what I observe. And also, if I may add, the last recession, I don't remember the year, 2008, 2009, yeah, the price was very low. The disposable income was a huge determining factor of the price decrease.
So basically you're saying sort of the diversification of markets of some of the processors might help buffer some of the downward trends. Yeah. Okay. I got a question here in the audience.
Hello. I was just wondering, getting back to your comment on Quebec producers receiving an initial payment, followed up by an interim payment and a final payment. Is there any is there a bottom to that interim payment? Like, they know they're getting something, but is it the low of 5 cents or 10 cents? I've heard things being thrown around here that producers or growers would love to have some type of receivable so that, okay, we get the initial payment now, and in the spring we're going to get some extra money so we can kind of plan for the season, because the same as processors, growers have a significant risk, and right now we're paid off at 70 cents, and no one has a clue in the world if we're getting any payment in the spring. I've heard not to look for it. I've heard we are, and so it's kind of got to work both ways. I just wondered if you knew anything, if there was a low payment on that.
The answer is no. The way it works, there's a meeting between, because in Quebec there's a marketing board first, and they have an official agreement that is overviewed by the Quebec Marketing Commission. Basically, the marketing board sits with the whole processor at the beginning of the season, and they have a discussion, and then there's a set initial price, and I think it's 60 cents in Quebec this year. And then they're going to meet again in December, if I remember well. Don't take me perfectly on the date, but and then they're going to have a chat on that, how much they're going to give. And the reason they asked me in Quebec is basically to follow what's going on in the market. It's exactly for the question you just asked me. They just want to make sure that the processor are aligned with what's going on in the market, and they are aligned with what they're giving back to the producer. So no, there's no minimum. For sure in Quebec, I'd like to know more. Everybody would like to get $1 at the harvest time. Sure, there's some discussion. But when there's more in-depth discussion with producer, they realize what I just mentioned before. If they put too much pressure on processor on that, they're gonna give them, yes, a higher beginning price, but they may get at the end of the year a lower ending price. So their objective is to let's say, get the best handling price.
I got one more, Pete.
Yeah.
What about the use of contracts? Is there a lot of that? I've heard up in northern New Brunswick, buyers are not trying to lock them in, but use contracts and with a promise a higher price. Is that commonplace in Quebec, or do you hear a lot about that?
No, in Quebec, it's a marketing board, so everybody get the same price. One thing I have to be clear, there's a better price for organic. There's some premium for Boreal wild blueberries, and there's a different price for the forest wild blueberries. But everything is how do you say? Except for the forest one, which are not regulated, the organic, Boreal, and regular. While in Quebec, they are the year of harvesting, there's no pesticide. Everybody gets the same price, and it's an audited price by an external firm that is hired by the marketing board. That goes and open the books of processors in Quebec.
So we do have a little bit more time if anybody has any. Yep, Jeff?
I'm wondering if you could go into a little bit more detail about the ownership structure and the marketing board and the history of that, because it's quite different from the maritime economic history. Thank you.
Okay. I will give you rough figures. I don't have the exact. For sure, in Quebec, there's few big producers that are also processors. I don't know exactly the percentage. They will claim a certain percentage. My feeling is a bit lower than that, but anyway, a big bunch is owned by the processor in Quebec. But after that, most of the production is done by so-called independent producers. And sorry, I forgot the remaining of your question. Sorry for that.
Just a history of the marketing.
Oh, the marketing board, yeah. Okay, sorry. The marketing board has been put in place many years ago. I would say maybe 20, 25 years ago. I'm not sure exactly, but a long time ago. And it's a marketing board like the marketing board, the same structure. If I want to give you an example, than the potato marketing board in New Brunswick or Nova Scotia. So basically, it's a marketing board. What it gives, there's an agreement between now there's 4 buyers, official processor in Quebec. And they sign an agreement with the marketing board, and that's the terms are the same for all processors. And there's a negotiation. Right now, they are starting a negotiation to review the agreement for the future, to make sure that it's going to be even more transparent. They're looking for more transparency, more partnership with processor. They are trying to improve their agreement with them. So it's a contract, it's a collective contract, and every producer are treated the same, even if you're an owner of a processing plant or if you're a producer. You're or a producer not owning any processing facilities.
Okay, Peter, I think you had a question.
Yeah, Gilbert, just trying to frame this a little bit. As you know or realize that probably this year's crop has been the most expensive crop for producers to produce. Like our costs have gone through the roof in some of our production costs. We look around to our other commodity boards or commodities that we're selling. Every commodity out there, I'll speak for the Maritimes, their return to producer has increased substantially, in most cases double-digit increases in what the producer has received for their product. I understand the volume of berries in Quebec is that whole cash flow thing. But the end producer, or we hear every day about the price of food on the grocery stores and stuff like that. So prices have gone up somewhere in the world. Looking in your crystal ball, because we're all sitting here trying to figure out how we're going to put next year's crop in plates. And we already are talking to some of our suppliers of the increase in price. And I know you'll try to, I'm asking a lot here, but do you see in a couple months' time, when some of this volume is moving, that price will start emulating some of the demands in the marketplace, the consumer price index and cost of production?
Two things here. If I was sure 100% of my answer, I'll be more than rich. But what I'm saying here, first, I'd like to remind you of key basic aspect. You're really in a, too bad, but that's the case. You're really in a supply and demand situation. And this year, there's let's say not a huge, but an important supply increase. Sure, I'm very well aware about the increase of input costs. I'm working with some commodity in Quebec about that, and very well about that. But the price is not established by cost of production, is established by the supply and demand, at least in the short run. The long run, we may argue that the people are going to use less input next year, so the production is going to go down and price is going to go up again. Might be. It happens 2 or 3 years ago. But the first thing, the supply is there. There's pressure. I'm going to go up about that again. Where is that? This one. As you can see, the global supply is high, but some light I see. Because when you speak with sellers from processing company, wild processors, right now the price is going down, but there has been an overflow. I think it's a short-term squeeze. We may see improvement over time. I was reading about the Chilean production that's going to be low. Well, it won't be a huge crop in Chile, and but the only question mark I have with them is they say that they're going to sell less fresh and more frozen because they are replanting, and some old varieties they don't want to sell it fresh, and they will freeze it. But basically, what we can see is I think there's going to be some price improvement. I don't think it's going to remain that low. I think we should, at least if the and the key point. And I don't know what they're going to do, but the wild frozen blueberry processors, they're going to have to make decision about what they're going to do with the inventory this year. And that may send the trend for the remaining of the year. And I don't know exactly what they're going to do. That's their decision. The question they probably ask themselves, will the production still be very high next year? Are we going to have, again, live, if I go back here, are we going to go back to what happened in 2016? Are we on that trend? That's their bet. And that's why I'm saying it's a risky business there. Because if you decide to keep inventory and next year it's another huge crop, then you're stuck with a good inventory and you have a huge production to move again. And then it's going to be more, you're going to suffer more next year. So it's not an easy decision. I know that's not what you'd like to hear from me, but that's what I read from the market.
One final question here.
Hi. Is this off now? Is it working? Okay, thanks. Thanks for your presentation and your work. Your slides, for the most part, the price slides, you were using a definite, or you were using maritime figures, and that excludes Quebec, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So we see a real symmetry in the kind of profit margins, producer price, processor selling price, the whole supply and demand paradigm. It seems to actually be dictating, what we get. And so maybe in some cases when we're angry around low prices, perhaps it's not just the evil processors, there's other factors in play. But I'm wondering what those slides would look like for Quebec. Is it the same symmetry? We've heard about the very different structure of the industry with the marketing board and some cooperative ownership and so forth. But are those profit margins similar? Those charts, would they be similar for Quebec?
The short answer is yes. The more complex answers is we sell at a higher price. And part of that is because we sell, as I said, a lot of organic product at a premium price. So when I capture the price, let's say from Quebec to the US, we have a huge premium over maritime price, but most of that is due to organic. There's a premium for organic product. It varies year over year. In fact, what we are trying to do now in Quebec is to get the second SH code to remove the organic from the, the regular product. So that's the first part of the answer. The second one, last year was kind of a tricky year too. And because the way it works in Quebec, processors has to report their final price independently. So they have to send in the, how you say, seal envelope, their ending price with all the detail to the board. So, and that I could say because it has been published on Facebook and different public media. Basically, one processor was at 130, one was at 150 final price, and another one was at 170, if I remember well. And there was two around 150 and one at 130 and one at 170. So there was kind of a good difference between them. The one at 130 decided to pay $1.50 to make sure that he's going to get supply this year. So basically, what happened last year, the price started to be low. Well, it was good, but month after month, the price was going up, and up. So depending of their strategy, they were able to capture a better price in the market last year. And that's one thing that I observe over more and more in the past. Was fairly easy to analyze your market. When the price was set in September, it was almost a straight line the remaining of the year. Right now, it's not the case anymore. There's more bump during the year. Like last year, it was really a huge step up. I don't want to give poor number, but let's say it started at, let's say in Quebec, it started at 220, it ended over $3, the export price. So depending at what time you sell your product, you get a much better price. So that's what happened last year.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much for this. I think it was very informative, and I think it's very good for the growers to hear that information. And we've been recording this, and we'll be able to post it again if people want to revisit some of those numbers. So we're going to have about a 45-minute break to recharge with coffee, grab a muffin, talk to a few people. Then we'll be back here in the room at just prior to 11 o'clock for a pollination panel. So those online, you can stay online, and we'll see you in a little bit.
Peter, if I may, before I leave.
Okay, sure.
If you have any question, any point you'd like me to analyze to have a better understanding of what's going on, just ask Peter, send it to Peter, he will send it to me, and I will try to, I will dig that. I'm not promising that I will find answer. I'm a so-called researcher. I try to, I know you like researcher that not do only research, but also find results. But I'll be more than happy to dig on that. And the basic idea between those bulletin and the work I'm doing for many years now with Quebec producer is to help you guys producer to have a better understanding of what's going on in the market, and to help you to have better discussion with your processor and be able to optimize your price at the end of the day. So thanks for you guys.
Salut, merci beaucoup.
Merci, au revoir.